Yeah, thank you very much, and just like to say thank you to Red Cloud for having us here to present. I'm actually just on my way to our site and our project that's in Northern Ontario, so I figured it would be a good opportunity to drop in and provide a bit of an update on AuTECO Minerals and who we are, the project we've got, and what our plans are for what was one of Canada's highest grade producing gold mines historically. While we're waiting, I'll just give you a bit of an introduction to AuTECO. So we're an Australian ASX listed company, but we are focused on the old Pickle Crow gold project, which is located in Northern Ontario. Sorry, this isn't working. All right, so you can see here the location, fantastic spot, 400 kilometres north as the crow flies from Thunder Bay, and it is a true Tier 1 jurisdiction. Although Northern Ontario is considered quite remote, it is well serviced by infrastructure. We have paved highways all the way there, all year access, and great airport. And one of the other things that we have running through the property is the hydropower, so it gives us a really strong advantage in terms of the ability to move this into production, because there is cheap, green and clean energy available to us. The asset itself was one of Canada's highest grade producing gold mines. Some of you guys may be familiar with a company called PC Gold that had this in the mid 2010s. And this mine itself, though, produced historically 1.5 million ounces of gold at a grade of 16.1 grams per tonne between 1935 and 1966. So, the grade is absolutely stellar. And look, what we saw in the project was an immense amount of upside. I'm a geologist by background, and one of the things that we know as geologists is where you find gold in the past is a great place to look for gold in the future. And we've taken the system-wide approach to this. We're a very aggressive company in terms of the way we approach these targets, and we invest very heavily in the drill bit. We try to make sure that most of our money goes into the ground. So what we've done since we've had the property, we entered into a joint venture agreement with a company called First Mining Gold in 2020. And in the 2.5 years that we've had the project, we've done 140,000 metres of diamond drilling. And what that has resulted in is one of the highest grade resources going around. So we have a resource at the moment of 2.2 million ounces at a grade of 7.8 grams per tonne gold, and a resource update coming out early in the new year. So, it's great that we've been able to achieve the growth. One of the things that we have done with the growth, though, is really focused on that upper 500 metres. You can imagine when the old timers were mining this thing with jacklegs in the old days, they were following the white veins, and they didn't look too hard left or right. So what we know as geologists is quite often there's different orientation structures there. And we've actually been looking for new structures that come away from the old workings rather than just mining remnant material around what has been extracted historically. So we've really focused on discovery of new material in the mine area. Just in terms of our capital structure and a corporate overview, as I mentioned before, we're ASX listed. Our current market capitalisation is around the $90 million Australian mark, which when you do the math and work out the enterprise value per resource ounce, we are very undervalued like a lot of our compatriots in the gold sector at the moment. But one of the things that we are fortunate about is that we do actually have cash in the bank and enough to keep going. So as at the end of September, we still had $11 million available. We currently have 2 rigs drilling and are well funded to complete our winter drill campaign. The other thing to note is that we've got a very supportive register. So, our major shareholders are North American. 39% of our register is institutionally held, which is pretty good for an exploration company. Obviously headlined by 1832, that has nearly 13% of the company, and just in the last year, Franklin's come on board at 6.2% as well. So we're very well supported on that front. And I know the first thing that North Americans look at is the number of shares on issue, 2.1 billion. That is a lot. Australians tend to view things a little bit differently. It's voodoo economics. It's more about market capitalisation rather than the number of shares on issue. But that is something that we're looking at into the future as well. Like a lot of other gold stocks around, it's been a challenging time, but in our point of view, now's a great time to buy. Some of the best investments are made as counter-cyclical investments. The company that I was with previously to AuTECO was a company called Northern Star Resources in Australia, and they built a multi-billion-dollar company buying gold assets when no one else wanted them. And, they're the classic example of why counter-cyclical investments can work. And look, we think with the results that we've delivered when the gold market does turn, and we've seen shoots of that in the last few days with a rapid rise in the gold price above $1,700, we'll be very well positioned to take advantage of that uptick in the gold sentiment. We're seeing signs of it in Australia now. One of the leading investment banks over in Australia called Argonaut Securities has just started a fund on small cap junior gold miners, and the reason they've done that is they see that they're so undervalued, and when the market does turn, they see strong growth potential in that. Just in terms of board and management, the board members that we have are involved in a company in Australia called Bellevue Gold, and basically, the MO there was to take an old, deposit that was historically mined in Western Australia, invest in the drill bit and discover more gold. It's a pretty simple game plan. And what the guys decided to do was try that same methodology in North America, which is, after a lot of screening and research, that's where the Pickle Crow deposit was identified, and managed to do the deal with First Mining Gold. We currently have 70% of the project and can earn to 80% with another $3 million Canadian investment. And that's not time bound, so we can do that at any time. And at this point in time, we'd rather put the money in the ground while we're generating such good results. The other point that I would make, and I'll just quickly touch on this, is the environmental and social governance. We've really embedded this into the DNA of our company from a very early stage. We have a great relationship with the Mishkogogumon people, and it's been fantastic. We have a strong Indigenous employment. Up to 30% of the people on our site at any time are Indigenous. And the other thing that I'm really proud of as a CEO is we have a really high participation rate of females in our workforce, and particularly in management positions, and we continue to promote that diversity within our workforce. Now, there's two ways we're going to grow this company. I mentioned before we've already got a 2.2 million ounce resource at 7.8 grams, but it's still open. And I know every MD and CEO gets up here and says it's open in all directions, but it is actually open in this particular case, particularly on strike and particularly with some of the new parallel structures. So we're investing in continuing to grow that 2.2 million ounce resource. As I said before, we'll have a resource update coming out towards the end of the year. These are JORC compliant resources, so very similar to 43-101, but just slight subtle differences, if you like. But one of the other things that we're really focused on, and this is what gets me very excited about this particular project, is the potential for regional discovery. When we got this project from First Mining, we had about 160 square kilometres of ground, and what we've done is we've actually expanded our land holding to around 500 square kilometres. So we've tied up pretty much the entire northern part of the Pickle Lake Greenstone Belt. And with the work that we've done in our exploration campaigns, one of the things that we really truly believe is that we're dealing with an entire mineral district here rather than just the Pickle Crow deposit. And that's where we see the opportunity, because a lot of the work and a lot of the activity has focused on Pickle Crow itself, but we believe there's more to this story than just Pickle Crow. It's a mineral district. So just in terms of where we are, we're in what's called the Uchi sub-province in the Superior Craton. And, what's significant about that is it's the same belt of rocks that hosts Red Lake, the same belt of rocks that hosted the Dixie discovery that Great Bear made, and obviously Kinross have taken out for a lot of money, pure gold, and we're in the same belt of rocks as, the Springpole project as well. So, the key takeaway from this particular slide is when we're looking for high-grade gold, there's really no better address globally than this Uchi sub-province. There's a long history of discovering and producing high-grade gold. Now, we know that some of those companies have had a few challenges with the narrow lode style in the Red Lake district recently. We have that lode style mineralisation, but one of the other things that makes this a little bit more distinct is we also have mineralisation that's hosted in banded iron formation, and that appears to be more akin to what they mine at Musselwhite. So we do have the very high grade lode gold. We know we need a high density of drilling in it to make it work, and I'll talk to that in future slides. We're going to get underground to really work out the geometries and that before we rush into production. One of the fortunate things about observing some of the things going on in the Red Lake district at the moment is we can learn from some of those mistakes that have been made by those operators, so we're determined to do that. But the bulk mining and the potential of that BIF adds another dimension to this particular story. All right. So the quartz veins themselves, typical Red Lake style, narrow but very, very, very high grade. Historic reports had the gravity recoveries at over 90%, so that gives you an idea of how coarse the gold is and how cheap the processing is. Some of the historic stuff didn't even have a CIL attached to it. With the banded iron formation, when the old timers were mining there between 1935 and 1966, they were mining at an 8 gram per tonne cutoff. So when we get this bulk style mineralisation that's anywhere between 1 gram and over 5 grams, it's been left behind and it hasn't been actively explored for in the district. So, we're pretty excited about the potential in our leases for this BIF style mineralisation. And you can see some of the hits that we've achieved with our drill programs, the 20.4 metres at 5.3, 19.5 metres at 3.3 and so forth. It really does add an extra dimension to the Pickle Crow story. This is not just a narrow vein deposit, but it does have the potential for bulk mining as well. I mentioned before, one of the things that really excites me is the regional exploration potential, and this slide shows our land holdings. What's really interesting here is if you look at this green box that's in the middle of that diagram, the entire 1.5 million ounces at 16.1 that was mined historically and our 2.2 million ounce resource are all within that little green box. And it's controlled by a structure called the core mine shear. But what any of us that have worked in these archean orogenic systems know is that quite often there's parallel structures to these and multiple deposits in a mineral district. And there are a number of other structures that are parallel that have been mapped historically. There's been very limited drilling done on them, but what work has been done on them shows that they are fertile and do contain gold. Now, what we've done recently, obviously, is really in the previous summer is get out there and do a lot of mapping and rock chip sampling while the snow cover's not there. So what we've done, we've gone along these structures, mapped in a great detail. The team that we've got on the ground in Canada, we've got a team of about anywhere between 15 and 20 people at one time, and they do a great job. We've only got 3.5 employees in Australia, so we do try to keep it Canadian-centric. But you can see some of the rock chip samples that they've achieved on parallel structures. So, the Tarp Lake Shear, for example, returned a result of 569 grams per tonne in a rock chip. I know they're only rock chips, they're not drill holes. But what it tells me as a geologist is that those structures are fertile and do contain a significant vein system. Last winter, when the ground was frozen, and I can tell you as an Australian, when I try to explain to people that it's better to drill in minus 30 than plus 30 degrees, they just cannot believe it because, when the ground's frozen solid, it's a lot easier to move the drill rigs around. we got some great results on parallel structures. The Talia discovery, that's one of these banded irons. They were supposedly lower grade, but we ended up with 5.5 metres at 18 grams in one of those, 4.9 at 3.6. One of the other parallel structures, which is closest to the existing resource, it's about just over a kilometre away. One of the holes that we drilled into it achieved a result of 2.1 metres at 92 grams per tonne. So we're starting to prove this concept that it is a mineral district and there's other structures with veining in it with the drill bit now. And what we're doing this winter is preparing to head out and test with the drill bit some of these targets on the Tarp Lake Shear and at Cohen MacArthur. So we've got quite an aggressive drill campaign planned for the next few months. When I go to site, I'll be praying for cold weather and hopefully it freezes as soon as possible, and the locals hate me for saying that. But we're really excited about what results will be generated in coming months. Just in terms of the near mine growth, this is around that 2.2 million ounce resource. This is where the majority of that 140,000 metres that we've drilled to date has gone, and you can see some of the results that we're getting are quite spectacular. Now, we've discovered new vein series well away from the old workings, and one of the ones that is quite interesting is what we call the Tyson vein set. And basically that's a bunch of stacked veins that we believe are linking structures between two shear zones, and they're quite a distance from the historic mining. And we've had some spectacular results on there. We've had up to 7.8 metres at 16.7 grams per tonne. So, these new structures, and you can see they are a slightly different orientation to what had been mined historically, slightly flatter based on our current interpretation, but they are extending further and further away from the old workings. So we're pretty excited about the near mine area as well. We've grown the resource rapidly, but this is an inferred resource at this point in time. And the reason for that, for those of you that know these narrow vein systems, is that you need a very high density of drill data to be confident enough to call them reserves. So they're inferred at the moment. We know there's a big mineral system there. What we call inferred is 60 metre by 60 metre drill spacing. So it's still pretty tight for a lot of deposits, but we're not comfortable to call it measured or indicated at this point in time. And we know that the best way to generate those reserves and the measured and indicated resources is from underground. So we are looking at plans on how we can get underground. Now, what the historic workings do for us is they give us some low capital options to do that. So we're currently doing mining studies at the moment to assess the best way to get underground. What the dream is at the moment, I mentioned earlier we've been focusing on the top 500 metres. 228 metres below the surface at a level called the 750 level, there's a drive that links all three historic production shafts, and that would make an ideal access point to drill this from underground. So it's what I would term recycling capital. There's a couple of ways we can do it. We can rehabilitate the historical shafts. Anyone that's been involved in those sort of projects know that that's an absolute nightmare and can almost cost you as much as sinking a new one, so probably my least preferred option. The other one is an exploration ramp from surface, and you'll notice I'm talking in the Canadian lingo. I didn't call it a decline, I called it a ramp. And the other potential thing that we can do also is with that bulk material that I mentioned before, we actually have open pits that optimise. So one of the options that we do have is to actually put a ramp, from the open pit and break into those areas. So, we're looking at all these ways to do it. So look, in the next 6 months, what we're really focused on in our winter drill campaign is regional discovery. While we can get out there, we can get out there all year, right? But it's the difference between having to chopper a rig in and being able to access by land, and the drilling cost is like almost a quarter of what it is when you can access by land rather than chopper. Put out the resource update. We're working on that at the moment. We're currently doing the interpretations there and preparing to do the estimate and review the underground access options. So, we've got the flexibility to preserve capital, and that's really important in this current environment. So look, just to wrap it up, why AuTECO? Great location. We love Canada. We love operating here. Tier 1 jurisdiction, all the things that you hear, it's on par with Australia in terms of it being probably the two best mining jurisdictions globally. The asset has a long history of producing high-grade gold. And, you know, for those people concerned about the continuity, there's 1.5 million ounces in gold bars that proves that the ore body was continuous because the old timers mined it. Huge upside. As I mentioned before, we believe we've got a camp and not just a deposit. Big difference. We're very committed to the environmental and community and the social responsibility, and it's our aim to leave a lasting benefit for the communities we work with. And we have a very strong corporate team. You know, the team on the ground in Canada is fantastic. I can't speak highly enough. Very experienced and doing a fantastic job bringing this deposit back to life.